absolute truth.
She's in prison for murdering her husband. But she swears she's innocent.
They look like a slightly struggling but optimistic young couple. Mike up at the Air Force Base, Wendy building her new veterinary practice.
At what point did this apparent dream life sour? And why?
Michael said that his marriage was rocky and that he was thinking about getting out.
It was on this ranch that police found a decomposing body, believed to be that of 24-year-old Dias Staff Sergeant Michael Severance.
Michael Severance survived 5 tours of duty in the Middle East, but he did not survive 5 months of marriage to Wendy Davidson.
He was telling her that he had a secret mission he was going on. I said, Wendy, that man hasn't got sense enough to pour piss out of the boot.
You can't make this stuff up. Like Dean Koontz couldn't make this up.
How is it that a wife finds the only way to get rid of a husband is through murder? It doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right.
I did not kill him.
We all know that Wendy's a pathological liar.
Who killed Mike Severance if it wasn't her?
Traveling to the Gatesville Correctional Facility about an hour west of Waco. I'm there to meet Wendy Mae Davidson, the former veterinarian, current convicted murderer. From day one, she has insisted she wasn't responsible for the death of her husband, Staff Sergeant Michael Severance. When you do interviews like this, you always wonder what it's going to be like looking into the eyes of a killer. But Wendy doesn't look or act like any of the killers I've talked to. I'm gonna cut to the chase and get right to business. You know, you've basically kept your silence for 15 years. Why did you decide to do this first network interview?
I was kind of advised from the get-go, I mean, it'd be best not to talk. It seems like that hasn't done me any favors. So I want my side of the story of what happened heard. So I want people to know what did and didn't happen.
Wendy's story starts here in West Texas.
St. Angelo is a funny little town because it's so isolated. There's just acres and acres and miles of nothing leading up to San Angelo.
It's pioneer country. It's ranchers. It's people who go to church, have very traditional values. Marriage, family, raising your children right. These are going to be the priorities for most people.
We are out here on our own. The closest town really of any size is an hour and a half away. So the people take care of the people here.
In the 1980s in San Angelo, Texas, a bright little girl named Wendy Mae Davidson grows up on what's a modest ranch. It's a quiet life with her father, Lloyd, who's a handyman, her stay-at-home mom, Judy, and her younger brother, Marshall.
Wendy was a happy little child. Animals became her life. In fact, by the age of 7, she knew she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up.
Wendy excelled as a student. She had to work hard, and she really worked hard. She was driven in a lot of ways to succeed.
Wendy took part in Future Farmers of America events and volunteered at a local veterinary clinic while she was still a student at Water Valley High School.
She went to school with my daughter. She was just fun-loving, and like I said, she was outgoing, and she was very responsible.
2,000 miles to the northeast is another small town, Lee, Maine.
It's very small, very, very depopulated. Lots of open land, but all of it was choked with trees, as thick as any jungle.
In this area, you get all 4 seasons. So during the summer, you're rollerblading, you're biking, you're outside in the summer, you're outside in the winter. There's always something to do.
In this deeply rural countryside, a little boy named Michael Severance also grows up in a close-knit family with his mom, dad, and younger brother, Frank.
Michael loved the snow. He loved being outdoors. He went hunting. He went fishing. He went skiing. He wanted to do everything. Downhill, cross country, you name it. And he excelled at it. And he was of the fabric of the woods of Maine.
And Michael's family still lives up here in North Maine.
Hi, Matt. Welcome to Maine.
Oh, thanks for having us.
This way.
Thank you. Yeah, tell me about Mike. What was he like growing up?
I had a great son. He was a very, very good man. He put other people first. I can show you document after document, letters after letters of his co-workers and such that say the same thing.
I often called my brother kind of my Superman. He was always there when I needed him.
Tragedy hits this family early on when Michael's mother suddenly collapses with a brain aneurysm.
I believe he was around 13 or 14 when his mom died. I think Frankie was 11.
Tough age to lose your mom.
Yes.
It was a shock to the system. We as a family, Mike, Dad, myself, we didn't know how to function without her. It was challenging. There were nights where I would cry myself to sleep and he would be there rubbing my back or just kind of telling me, everything's going to be okay.
Near the end of high school, what were his career ambitions or just ambitions in general?
I said, I suggest the military. And a little while later, he came to me and said, Dad, I'm going to enlist in the Air Force.
This was the life-changing event for him to join the Air Force, to do the things that he had always dreamed of doing in terms of adventure and being part of a team.
Mike was stationed at the Air Force Base in Abilene, which is about an hour and a half from San Angelo. He loved the job because of the camaraderie, because of the sense of adventure, because of the feeling he got from knowing he was doing something to serve his country. That meant a lot to him.
Joining the Air Force is a turning point in Michael's life. Being a part of that Air Force team and then ending up in Texas, certainly he was a fish out of water in many ways in Texas.
There are a lot of ifs about this case. If only Michael had never left Maine. If only he'd never joined the Air Force. If only he'd never been stationed in Abilene, Texas. But all of that did happen to a young man with a promising military career ahead of him. And then he met Wendy.
I wish I could do it all over again. I don't think I was a terrible person. I think I just made a really horrible mistake.
A lot of people were pretty certain that something was wrong.
At what point did this apparent dream life sour, and why? Long before Wendy Mae Davidson crosses paths with Michael Severance, she's an aspiring young woman with a dream of working with animals. Even as a teenager at Water Valley High School, she has plans to become a veterinarian. Her younger brother, Marshall, has ambitions to go into law enforcement. And at the heart of the family is Judy, a powerful personality who's got high hopes for her children.
The Davidson family was people described them as close-knit, and I always thought that meant guarded.
Going way back, who was Wendy Mae Davidson? Who were you?
Grew up on a farm. So, my life pretty much revolved around animals. I like to go out and have fun, but for the most part, animals, veterinary medicine, and my family, that was pretty much me.
By almost all accounts, the person closest to Wendy, the central figure in her life, is Judy, a strong and loving mother.
Judy saw the potential in her daughter and was determined to help her fulfill it. In 1996, Wendy graduates second in her class from Water Valley High School.
Judy wanted her daughter to be successful. There was a lot of drive in that family.
And success in high school leads to success in college for Wendy.
Wendy went to Texas A&M, which is one of the toughest veterinary schools, and she did very well. But she was also rebellious. She also wanted to have fun.
I think in some ways, once she tasted freedom, she just went overboard.
And she got pregnant while still in Texas A&M.
In October 2001, Tristan is born. Now, Wendy says that her relationship with Tristan's father falls apart, leaving her a single mother and a student.
Her mom moved across the state of Texas to live with Wendy, to care for the infant so that Wendy could continue to go to school.
Wendy graduates with a veterinary degree in May 2002, and she heads back to West Texas. Gets her first job as a vet in Abilene. Meanwhile, Michael Severance is also in Abilene, stationed at Dyess Air Force Base.
After several deployments to combat zones in the Middle East, Mike continues to build a terrific career and assume greater levels of responsibility as a C-130 crew chief. So he loved the Air Force, was doing really well.
The worlds of Wendy Mae Davidson and Michael Severance are about to collide.
Mike and Wendy met when he was out line dancing. And I think she just was drawn to him like a magnet.
I was there with a friend, and he came and asked me to dance. And I had an emergency call before long, so I had to go see a pet. Something I normally wouldn't do. I gave him my phone number just because I had to leave, and I figured I might never see this guy again.
They had a flash romance. I think they just hit it off immediately.
He was quite surprised when she called up and said, "Hello, I'm pregnant with your child."
Despite only knowing each other for a couple of months, the couple decides they want to make a go of it, and Wendy introduces Mike to her family.
Mike probably didn't make the best impression on the Davidsons family. They probably think he's a little bit too much of a playboy, a guy who's out at the bars trying to pick up women. Judy did not like him from the outset.
Why didn't your family like Mike?
I think it was probably primarily my mom. She never liked any guy I ever dated. She always felt like they weren't good enough. Mike came along, she thought that he was rude.
In what way rude?
One story she told me was when we were staying at her house overnight, she told me she saw him walking in the hallway to the bathroom at night in his boxer shorts, and she thought that was disrespectful.
Judy described Mike as lazy and claimed he'd get angry if anyone asked him to do anything, so she said she kept her distance from him.
I think she looked at him as kind of a scrub. He's come into her life, the first thing he does is get her pregnant.
So I found out I was pregnant with Shane, but it was just, things happened out of order.
Kind of sounds like the pregnancy forced you into marriage.
He asked me, do you want to get married now? And of course I wanted to. I wasn't going to pressure him.
In September 2004, Wendy's second child, Shane, is born. And Mike makes a decision that will change his life forever.
The wedding was in a Justice of the Peace office. They repeated their vows, the rings were exchanged, and that was that.
Michael's dad and brother traveled to Texas for the wedding, and it feels like an immediate culture clash.
Lloyd came in and he said, "You must be the dad." And I said, "I am." And he said, "Well, I'm Lloyd." We shook hands and he turned around and left. And that was pretty much it. Judy Davison came in, pretty much just introduced herself and left.
But Judy remembers the day differently. She says she bought the wedding cake, paid for the dinner, and that Mike never even thanked her. As for Les, Judy says she felt he was a bit standoffish.
They were supposed to meet us all for this dinner, which they never showed up. So there was animosity right from the get-go.
The Davidsons want to give their daughter a hand, so they help her finance her veterinary clinic. At the back of the building, there's just enough space for a small apartment, and it's there that Mike eventually moves in with Wendy and the two boys.
It was really very small and cramped for 4 people. It wasn't a very comfortable existence.
Wendy is trying to manage 2 small children, a tiny little residential area, her family, and her practice. So there's a tremendous amount of stress in this relationship for a young couple that basically are starting out with 2 young kids.
And adding to these rising tensions, Michael's about to be redeployed.
So long days, and then on top of that, he chose to live well away from the base, so ended up having to spend 3 hours out of every day commuting, which in itself takes a toll.
It just becomes almost a big cauldron, boiling, a situation that could easily boil over.
Michael's just returned from an Air Force training course and gets into an argument with Wendy.
Wendy started yelling at him, and Michael's pretty much said, "Screw this, I'm gonna take Shane and go to Abilene." That stirred up a hornet's nest.
It's Thursday, January 13th. It's been 4 months to the day since Wendy married Mike. He's just gotten back from an Air Force training course and gets into an argument with Wendy.
And Mike, without saying a word, took Shane and drove up to Abilene.
Just to, cool off, lose steam. And he hadn't shown Shane around to his friends.
He didn't tell Wendy he was leaving. I mean, he was upset with Wendy.
Wendy, of course, is losing her mind trying to figure out where he is and where he has taken their son. She's calling him, but he will not answer the phone.
There was a confrontation with him.
When he got back, he caught hell from Wendy that he can't just take the baby whenever he likes. Mike said, "Well, it's my son too. I can take my son whenever I want."
Wendy took Michael's taking off with the baby as a sign of things to come, as a warning, a portent.
He's now under significant pressure at home, and Mike is also readying himself for redeployment, likely to the Middle East.
We learned today of 2 more American soldiers killed in Iraq. 577 U.S. troops have died in action now since the war began.
Michael had deployed several times to the Middle East after 9/11, so he knew what deployments were like. But this was the first time with his new wife, with a baby, that he would have to leave them behind and again go somewhere else on the other side of the world. And it creates a lot of anxiety and angst. So that house was under a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety just prior to his deployment.
It did seem you had a guy who had a good job. Maybe he was about to be deployed, but was there for you and the children. He helped. He was loving to you. You guys had fun. At what point did this apparent dream life sour? And why?
I still don't know that it ever did. Everything was fine to me, but see, I was busy. I was in the middle of trying to run this clinic I had just opened, taking care of 2 little babies. The only thing that I noticed that changed with Mike was he was having a very hard time driving back and forth to Abilene every day. So I did notice that he would still drink every afternoon. He was drinking, but then he started kind of, at first I noticed he was using caffeine pills and like ephedra, something like that. He did ask me on a couple occasions if I had anything that could help him sleep, and the only thing I ever gave him was Benadryl.
Would you say that he was abusing alcohol and drugs?
At the time, I didn't realize there was an issue, but looking back, like hindsight's 20/20 and everything, so looking back, obviously there was a problem. That's not normal.
Now, despite what Wendy says, there was never any evidence that Michael had a problem with drugs or alcohol. It seems that even with everything else they're going through, the couple has at least one thing to look forward to. They planned to squeeze in a trip to Michael's hometown in Maine before his next deployment. They booked tickets for the whole family, Mike, Wendy, Tristan, and baby Shane, for Sunday, January 16th.
Michael was very, very excited because we were excited. A lot of his friends were going to get to see the baby and his new wife.
So I was really much looking forward to spending an hour or 5 minutes or just, hey, good to see you, give him a quick hug, hold the baby and spend some time with the baby.
And, just kind of show Tristan what snow was. I'm not even sure if Wendy had ever seen snow, so it was going to be a change for them, too.
Regardless of the challenges they're facing, on Friday, Wendy and Mike decide to go out for the evening. Just the two of them.
Michael doesn't know it yet, but his days are now numbered.
That last Friday night that you went out to dinner together, probably had a few drinks.
Yes.
Do you remember anything about that night?
We went out, we had fun, we came back, he slept in. I mean, everything seemed fine to me, that night, and even the next day when I saw him.
That was Friday, you saw him Saturday.
Yeah, he was at the clinic.
And then everything gets murky. Between Friday night and Sunday morning, we really just have Wendy's version of events.
Describe to me the last time that you say you saw your husband alive.
Okay, so Saturday morning, I stayed at the clinic until 3. And I was going to take Shane and go get Tristan because we were supposed to go to Maine on Sunday. I saw Mike, he was in the back watching TV. And I told him that I was going to go out to my parents' house and get Tristan and I would be home in a little while.
No one other than Wendy knows exactly what happens next. But one thing is for sure. Mike will never be heard from again.
And Tristan started crying. He said, "Mommy, why are you crying?" And I said, "Because I don't know where Daddy is." I said, "I guess we're not going to go to Maine."
It was January 16th, 2005, and that's when everything changed up here for the Severance family.
We were supposed to go to the airport and pick him up. I walked through the door and said, how come you guys aren't ready? Let's go. We gotta go out. We got an hour and a half ride to Bangor to pick Mikey and Mikey's wife and baby. We gotta get them. And Brenda says, you need to sit down. She said, well, Michael's missing. I said, what do you mean Michael's missing? Well, Wendy can't find him.
She's saying that she couldn't go to Maine because she can't find Michael. She's saying maybe Michael went to Maine without me.
I got to talk to Wendy and ask her, what's going on, Wendy? What's up? And she says, well, I don't know. I had taken his truck and gone to my mom's house, and when I got back, he was gone.
Clearly, Michael, Wendy, and the boys are not catching that flight to Maine. Instead, Wendy calls her mother, Judy. Did your parents know that Mike disappeared?
When I called, I asked my mother, do you know where Mike is? And she said, no. Do you know where Mike is? And I said, well, he's not here. I don't know where he is. And she said, well, then you need to come up to the house right now. So I got the boys, went out there. I went to sleep at some point.
Now, here's one of the first strange things Wendy does. Despite her parents telling her to call the police, Wendy spends that Sunday sleeping on and off throughout the day at their house.
Definitely thinking, if my husband was missing, I wouldn't sleep. I wouldn't eat. I would be searching for him. I would be looking for him. I would be calling everybody I knew on the sun to come help me.
And Wendy does eventually call the San Angelo Police Department at 6:43 p.m. that night, telling them her husband is missing. And a manhunt begins.
So I knew we had a missing airman,
and they were in the process of looking for him.
He'd totally fallen off the radar screen, totally disappeared.
The very next day, Wendy does something extraordinary.
Within 24 hours, she filed for divorce.
Bizarre as this sounds, Wendy does have an excuse. It wasn't her idea, she says. It was her parents.
I was a zombie at this point in time, just doing whatever they said. My dad took me to the attorney's office, told him whatever.
You signed the papers, though.
Of course I did. They told me to sign the papers. I did what they told me to do. And I don't know why.
Not only did she file for divorce, but she got a restraining order against him. A restraining order that forbid him from writing to her, being around her, talking to her on the telephone.
In that request for the restraining order, Wendy claims she's worried Michael will take Shane away from her. Just a day after Mike went missing, that Wendy filed for divorce and filed for a restraining order against Mike.
Red flag.
In the days that follow, officers talk to Wendy and visit the clinic.
On Wednesday, Wendy is interviewed by the San Angelo Police Department. She says that Saturday afternoon was the last time she saw her husband.
I walked in and he went anywhere, but I thought, well, that's not unusual. He probably crossed a couple of walkways or maybe went on the ground or something. He went back a little bit. Straight, more worried, and I started crying. And Tristan started crying. He said, Mommy, why are we crying? And I said, because I don't know where Daddy is, and we don't hurry up and get back, and we can't get everything packed. I said, I guess we're not going to go to Maine. So about 5 o'clock, that's when I picked up the phone and I called my parents and said, don't hurt from Michael.
Days later, the investigation ramps up and the San Angelo police team up with the Texas Rangers.
My name is Sean Palmer. I'm a retired Texas Ranger. I joined the investigation with the Tom Green County Sheriff's Department and the San Angelo Police Department as kind of a task force approach to the investigation. And so we got together and came up with ideas of other leads that we could follow to find out what happened to Michael.
The investigators want to know if they can think of any reason why Michael might have run off. They talked to some of his buddies.
I believe I met him in the latter part of November of 2004. I'd even told him that any time he was in San Angelo to give me a shout. So he said, I don't go down there a whole lot because my mother-in-law hates me and she wished I was dead. And I kind of giggled about it, and he said, no, I'm serious. I just thought, well, maybe he's had enough of it and kind of went for a few days away. And then I learned he left his car and his cell phone, and I thought that was really strange because, you know, everybody lives by both nowadays. And that's when I really began to wonder if something was really going on.
The more the Rangers dig, the more they discover just how unhappy Michael appears to be in his marriage.
During the investigation, we interviewed a friend of Michael Severance named Jeffrey Holden. And during our interview with Mr. Holden, he said that he had spoken to Michael around November-December period. And during that conversation, Michael said that his marriage was rocky and that he was thinking about getting out.
Now, this is something the Texas Rangers want to drill down into further.
So I obtained the cell phone records for his cell phone to try and determine what activity there was on his phone around the time that he went missing. And in one case, a female had his phone number programmed in her phone.
It was a compelling lead. These calls to Michael's phone. Could Mike, in fact, be seeing another woman?
This is not my son, Michael. This is not what he does.
Staff Sergeant Michael Severance is missing. His newlywed wife, veterinarian Wendy Davidson, says he left their home while she was out with her family. There's no sign of him anywhere. His father, Les, is getting very anxious. At that time, were you confident of the investigation by the Texas Rangers and the San Angelo police?
No, I gotta be honest. I was not. They weren't asking the right questions.
When Michael doesn't show up for work, he's considered AWOL, absent without leave. but it's highly unusual for somebody that had been in the service this long to just disappear. That raised the red flags, and that's why the Air Force was so diligent. We need to find out what happened here. So they now need to get the OSI involved, the Office of Special Investigations, because this is a mystery.
OSI has a lot of resources they can use on investigation, and as the investigation progresses, such as this one, where we're looking at a deserter case.
There are now several law enforcement agencies joining together to investigate Michael's disappearance. The task force then goes back to the clinic and decides they need to take a closer look at the cell phone records.
We were able to identify some of the phone numbers that contacted him, and in one case, a female had his phone number programmed in her phone.
One of the scenarios that came up was the fact that Michael might be having an affair with another woman.
It seemed like a compelling lead. Midnight calls to Michael's phone from a mystery woman. Maybe he was hiding out with her.
I believe that if Michael was going to leave with another woman, he would have ended things with Wendy. He would have said, this isn't for me anymore, I want a divorce, and he would have done it the right way before he would have walked away. I don't think Mike had it in him to be a cheater or anything like that.
It turns out this would-be girlfriend is just an old friend calling Michael. Nothing more than that. But when investigators talk to the Davidsons, the couple supports the other theory from their daughter Wendy, that Michael's gone AWOL.
He was all concerned about he didn't want to be deployed because he was afraid that something bad was going to happen. And he kept saying, like, those guys will go over to Canada. It would be so easy just to go over to Canada.
What do you think happened to him?
I think he just piped out.
You think it's strange he left with no clothes and no money?
If you had met the guy, you wouldn't think it's strange at all. Because, I mean, he was just one super glue.
You think anybody hurt him or anything?
You are a pretty smart mouth. So, you know, if he popped off at somebody, I mean, he was obnoxious, he was rude, he was nasty. I wasn't a part of it. And I didn't want her or my babies to have any part of it. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like him, never did, and never will, and I hope no harm's come to him, but if I never see him again, that's fine too.
I'm gonna ask this question of everybody. Did you do anything to him?
No, I did not.
You just have a seat right there. I'll be right back with you. All right. Well, I asked Judy this too. I said, because I gotta ask you, and I don't think anything did, but I asked her, I said, did you do anything to him? Did you hurt him, or do you know if anybody did? Do you know?
Well, I never did, and I never would. My thoughts are that at first I was leaning towards he'd probably get out somewhere at Abilene because that's where most of his friends are and stuff. You know, people that he knew. But then, the more time goes by, I think, well, maybe one of his family members had him out since he always told Wendy how easy it'd be to go over to Canada from Maine. And then, according to her, he had even said something about how easy it'd be to get fake IDs and stuff like this.
If he had taken off to Canada or something, you wouldn't
I wouldn't
cover him.
Oh, gosh, no. I'd let y'all have him in a minute. He was telling her that he had a secret mission he was going on. I said, Wendy, that man hasn't got sense enough to pour piss out of a boot. Do you really think they're going to send him on a secret mission? He had like 3-4 years left, something like that. He wanted out. He started people telling him what to do.
The Davidson family seemed to indicate that they believed that Michael was worried about an upcoming deployment, and so he left on his own to avoid being deployed.
The task force talks to Michael's family and friends and look into his service record.
Michael really loved the service. There was no indication that he was a malcontent. He liked being in the Air Force, and he had gone to Afghanistan, and he was going to do it again.
His friends' minds are starting to go to some pretty dark places.
I mean, things started running through my head that maybe a possibility that something had happened to him. That somebody did do something to him.
It's now more than 2 weeks since Michael was last seen, and investigators search Wendy's clinic yet again. This time, they get Wendy's permission to make a copy of her computer hard drive for analysis. It'll be several weeks before the results come back. In the meantime, investigators aren't ruling anything out. They're even considering the possibility that if Michael is AWOL, maybe it's Wendy who's helping them hide out.
Their next move is critical. They put Wendy under surveillance in the hope she'll lead them to where Michael might be.
We were given permission to place the tracking devices on Wendy's car.
With that tracker in place, the task force will know anywhere that Wendy goes, and they're hoping it leads them to Michael's location. Wendy's car is recorded making a trip to the 4 Sevens Ranch. It's about 20 miles outside of San Angelo.
They noticed on the tracking download that she had spent quite a bit of time at the pond.
Then on March 3rd, the results of Wendy's laptop search come in. Some bone-chilling revelations come to light.
Ultimately, what became a breaking point in the investigation was when we learned about the research that she had done on the computer.
When they looked in that computer, they found out that she'd looked to see about body decomposition.
For her to research that, it would indicate that she had some knowledge that Michael's body was in a body of water.
Ranger Sean Palmer goes back to the clinic to question Wendy one more time. And at first, she seems to have answers for why she's searching the internet about decomposing bodies.
She wasn't caught off guard by those questions. She explained that she had researched the decomposition of a body in water because during that time period, volunteer searchers were out searching for Michael.
But he presses Wendy further, telling her he knows she's been to the 4 Sevens Ranch, and he wants to know why.
She obviously became disturbed by the information that the pond would be searched, and it caused her to kind of lose her composure that she had maintained throughout the investigation.
And that's when Wendy started to feel the fire breathing down her neck.
She grabbed her infant son, jumped in her car, and took off.
If you're keeping score as to who's behaving like they're innocent and who's behaving like they're guilty, Wendy's behaving like she's guilty.
Once police started really being on your tail, you called your brother Marshall.
Yes.
Wendy's brother Marshall is a game warden. That's a law enforcement role, and he's now in an awkward position.
They agree to meet at a nearby location, Grape Creek Cemetery, and that's where Wendy May's story is about to take a major plot twist.
So Marshall arrived first, and he said, "Why am I here? What are we doing here?" And she said, "I've got to tell y'all something." He said, "Well, tell me now."
What happened there?
I told him what had happened. That I had found Mike dead, and he dumped his body in the pond.
The story Wendy tells her brother is that she came home that Saturday and found Michael dead in their living room. And in a panic, she decides to get rid of his body in a pond on the 4 Sevens Ranch.
Of course, he was a bit shocked, but she kept swearing that she hadn't killed Michael.
But Wendy's revelation to her law enforcement brother Marshall is about to tear this close-knit family apart.
He said, "Wendy, I'm a cop. You can't be telling me this." He was like, I can't believe you just told me this. Parents drove up, and me and my brother were telling them everything that happened, which was, that I had found him dead and he dumped his body in the pond. My brother told me that he was going to try to call an attorney, and instead he called the police.
So as your brother had called the police, they came to take you away to questioning. What did you think? What was going through your mind? Did you feel betrayal at that moment?
I didn't feel anything except impending doom. I was crying, vomiting. Everything was horrible. Everything.
And then the bombshell. As they approach Wendy, investigators hear her say that she didn't kill Mike, but that someone else in her family did.
Wendy was insisting that a member of her family had murdered Mike, and so she got rid of the body to save one of her family members from getting into trouble.
So let's just take a step back. You wake up Saturday morning, you have a veterinary clinic, a live husband, 2 kids, and a life. Almost all of that is gone. Wendy's revelation to her brother Marshall is about to tear this close-knit family apart.
Wendy was insisting that a member of her family had murdered Mike, so she got rid of the body.
Your 2 boys are in the car seats in the truck, and in the flatbed is your husband who's dead.
Yes. Unfortunately, yes, that's the truth.
If she didn't kill that young man, why did she throw him away?
I thought if somebody killed my son, maybe somebody would try and kill my grandson.
Wendy, only a guilty person disposes of a body the way you did. An innocent person calls the police.
You wouldn't do anything to protect your mother or your child or your wife.
Is there one memory from the good times that you hold on to?
The best thing that I remember about Mike was one morning I had woke up on a Sunday morning and he was laying in the crib with both the boys asleep, curled up with him. He said Shane woke up, so he said I was trying to get him to go back to sleep, and then Tristan woke up and came and crawled in bed with us.
Sounds like a sweet dad.
He was a good dad.
So, all in all, we're talking about a good man.
Yes.
A good man, but one whose body Wendy says she left at the bottom of that stock pond.
A couple of detectives' cars came pulling up, and they went to where the Davidson family were gathered at the cemetery.
When you found your husband dead, when you say you found him dead,
Right.
what did you do?
I had both the boys with me, and I told Tristan, go play in the other room. And I went over to him to see if he was alive, to feel for a pulse. And of course, there wasn't a pulse. He was cold to the touch.
Why didn't you call the police?
I think that that's maybe what most people would have done if they didn't think that someone in their family was involved. This is what I thought. He's dead. I can't bring him back. I can't save him. But if my mother is involved in this, I can save her. So I made the horrible, horrible decision that I was going to move his body and just pretend he went missing.
Wendy was insisting that a member of her family had murdered Mike, and so she got rid of the body to save one of her family members from getting into trouble.
How do you make that leap to my mother must have done this? And then another huge leap back to going, oh, well, I have a decision to make. Because even if my mother must have done this, you probably still should be calling 911.
Wendy's put in the back of the patrol car and taken from the cemetery to the police station for what's going to be a very long night.
And by the time Wendy gets into the interrogation room, she's suddenly doing a lot less talking.
He kind of got to know from you, why this all happened. But I'm not talking to you.
And that's just about all the police get from Wendy that night. Now, Wendy's brother Marshall is also interviewed by police that night about his sister's shocking revelations.
What happened this evening? You wasn't out there.
Well, I don't know if I should tell you either. But, I mean, basically, she did something, but she didn't kill him, hurt him, anything like that. But she knows where he's at. She's like, I didn't do anything, this and that.
Now, in the interview room is Wendy's mother, Judy, who, given the circumstances, seemingly has no problem with the fact that her son called the police on his sister.
She's pretty upset with you.
Well, and I know she is, but he did the right thing. He did the right thing, and I know he's going to catch flack for her, but he did the right thing.
And when did he call y'all at the house, or did she call your son, Marshall?
She called me out. I answered the phone. And she said to everybody come to the cemetery.
Did she say, is there blood? Did she say she just found him dead, or?
She just found him dead. She said, I didn't do it, but I moved it. She thought that I had done something, or one of us.
Did you have anything to do with what happened to Michael?
I thought he had run away. No.
I understand it's a hard question.
No, it's not. I know you have to ask it, and he knows that I hated it, but I would never, ever. I couldn't even help with dogs. I couldn't.
And now, Wendy's father, Lloyd, confronted with his daughter's unthinkable accusations.
What did she say she found?
She said she walked in and said he was laying in the floor in boxer shorts. And she went over and looked at him and said he was dead. That's what wrong. I said, well, how did he die or whatever? She said, well, I don't know. I said, it didn't seem like anybody had shot him or anything. She said he was just laying in the bed.
What did she do? What did she say she did there?
She just said she that's why she was so scared. She said she just knew that since we had keys and stuff, that just knew one of us had done it.
Were you kind of surprised that she thought John killed him?
Well, yes, I was kinda, but not totally shocked because she knew that Judy hated him. I've never heard Judy threaten to kill him.
And what about Lloyd and Judy urging Wendy to go to that lawyer to file for divorce?
Was it John's idea or was it Wendy's idea to file for divorce?
That was ours and especially Judy's, because we said, said if he's starting to pull that kind of stuff, said it's going to do nothing but get worse. I mean, he's already getting drunk all the time. He's already running off with a baby and stuff. You don't need that. So you need to get away from him.
So at this point, all Wendy is being charged with is tampering with evidence, and she's going to be held at the county jail, with no reason to believe that Wendy's family is in any way involved in the disposing of Michael's body. They do not press charges against Lloyd, Marshall, or Judy. But a gruesome discovery is about to be made at that pond. It turns out that dead men do tell tales.
How do you go to a pond and stab that body 41 times? How do you do that?
I was coming home from hanging out with some friends, pulled in the driveway, and the car with government plates was in our driveway at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. That's not a good sign. Walked down over the driveway, and Dad said he's gone. When I lost my mom, I was still a little young to fully grasp the effects. So when I lost Mike, I lost a big part of myself.
So what do we have here?
This is Michael in front of his aircraft, C-130. It's hard to convey to people what kind of a person your son is, because everybody has a great son. He said to me one day, Dad, I want to be a truck driver. I want to haul logs. And I sat him down and I said, Michael, you only know Lee, Maine. You need to go out and see the world and then decide if you want to come home and be a truck driver and haul logs in Lee, Maine. And I suggest the military. But if I hadn't have said that, if I'd have said, go ahead and be a truck driver, Mike, he might be coming through the door right now. I'm sorry.
It's not your fault, Les.
I know. But you can't always control your emotions.
And now the true horror of what had happened to Michael Severance is about to unfold. The investigative team makes its way to the 4-7's ranch.
To get to this ranch, you travel 7 miles north of the city limits on U.S. Highway 87. You'll turn on one of the side paved roads and follow it for about 3 miles.
There were approximately 10 investigators, along with the Texas Department of Public Safety dive team.
Not a great big pond. And I know it was cold, and there's a little breeze that would come off that water, make it cold.
It was kind of an uneasy anticipation about what would be found.
We're all on the shoreline kind of watching where the divers are. These are guys who are like search divers. I mean, they have the boots and a big bell head, and they run air down to them. And all of a sudden, they said something, and the diver that had the radio that was talking with them, and then he looks up and says, they got him, they found him.
He was wearing underwear, and he had lots of different implements tied to his body.
They knew something was holding him down because he just wasn't buoyant, and then guided him to the shoreline where other ones were able to get him out of the water, and that's when we got him in the body bag.
Because of the cold temperatures in the water, the body had been preserved.
In all the 36 years I've been doing this, I've never had a human remains in water with apparatuses tied around his person to hold him in the water.
How did you move the inert weight of a 160-pound man?
Well, there was a box sitting over in the corner, and in my mind, I thought I was just gonna roll the body in the box, and I was gonna pick the box up and put it in the back of the truck.
A cardboard box?
Yes, that's what I thought in my crazy mind. Look, I can't make this stuff up. This is real.
Okay.
This is so crazy. Like, you can't make this stuff up. Like, Danny Koontz couldn't make this up. What I did was absolutely horrible, but it's the absolute truth. I rolled the body in this big cardboard box, and of course, no, I couldn't lift it into the back of the truck like my crazy mind thought. So I devised a ramp out of a couple of boards, put them on the tailgate.
Where are your kids while you're devising the ramp and loading cinder blocks on your dead husband?
Shane was only 4 months old, so I'm almost positive that he was asleep through that whole thing. I do remember they were both asleep when I got in the truck because I put them in the car seats.
So your 2 boys are in the car seats in the truck, and in the flatbed is your husband who's dead?
Yes. Unfortunately, yes, that's the truth.
Wendy says she drove her husband's body to the stock pond on the 4-7's ranch.
I had these cinder blocks in the fishing line and a knife to cut the fishing line. I put the cinder blocks on these handles in this big cardboard box and pushed it down the hill. As soon as the cardboard box hit the water, it disintegrated. So now I have to devise something different.
So Mike's body is now floating in the pond?
It's sitting in about a foot of water. So I had to take these weights and I'm trying to tie them onto this body. And of course it's the middle of the night, you know, can't hardly see.
And there's one other grisly detail the police now discover. Michael's body is covered in puncture wounds, 41 of them, suggesting he had been stabbed to death.
His body is taken to the medical examiner's office to determine the cause of death.
The main thing I think we came out of this was there were a number of stab wounds. They were in some sort of like cluster, but I don't believe a single wound would be considered lethal or would, generate a death to the individual. I think the conclusion was these were post-mortem stab wounds.
If the stab wounds didn't cause Michael's death, why were they there?
I knew air made bodies float, so I decided to make holes in the body, vent holes, like so the air could escape.
So you were actually stabbing your dead husband's abdomen to make these holes so that gases could escape.
Yes.
She really thought that nobody would find the body at the bottom of that pond. She took a gamble, sure, but taking gambles never seemed to bother Wendy.
So if it wasn't drowning or the stab wounds, investigators now have to wait for the toxicology report to reveal the cause of death.
They had found animal tranquilizers in his system.
And how will the Chihuahua named Wheezy finally break the case wide open? With her husband's body now retrieved from its icy tomb, Wendy Mae Davidson is taken into custody and remains there for the next 34 days. It calls Wendy Mae to her brother Marshall and her mother Judy. It seems jail is a shock to her system.
I'll be much quieter when I get out of this little house. I mean, it's not trying to be there's no TV, no chairs, the only girl that that's not one. She was actually paralegal. So I didn't talk to her about the case at all.
And then Judy gives Wendy some savvy advice.
Make a plan. I know, I didn't say nothing.
Then, with her brother Marshall, it's sounding like Wendy is starting to worry about Michael's toxicology report, which her lawyer told her is about to be released.
They sent samples off to some medical labs to see about toxicology. Now, he said he doesn't know about if there's anything in the system or not. I mean, if there is, they still can't prove that it was me or you or anybody else.
On April 8th, Wendy gets out on bond and goes back to work at her animal clinic. And then the toxicology report on Michael comes back. It reveals exactly what was in his system.
We are very confident that the cause of death was due to the combined toxicity of 3 drugs: phenytoin, pentobarbital, and phenobarbital. That was why the person died. It was not the stab wounds, it was not a drowning, it was not because they were weighted down, there was no lethal blunt force trauma. This is the cause of death. It's the taking of these drugs.
Now that toxic cocktail of 3 drugs is a showstopper for investigators. Why? Because of what those drugs are used for.
The first thing the medical examiner found when he got the body was that he had been poisoned with medications that veterinarians use usually to tranquilize or euthanize animals.
When we find out that he had been euthanized, it's kind of signed, sealed, delivered, right? She's a veterinarian, and they had found animal tranquilizers in his system. Kind of writes itself from there.
Armed with this new information, the task force conducts yet another search of Wendy's vet clinic.
We had to go back and conduct another search to go ahead and seize those drugs that were consistent with what was found in Michael's body.
Now keep in mind, Wendy's been out of jail for a couple of days now. She's back at work at her animal clinic when police arrive to conduct that search.
Phenobarbital is a controlled substance. Its dispensing must be documented in controlled substance logs. We seized controlled substance logs from the clinic.
They find crumpled up records in the trash can.
The records belong to a dog named Wheezy. He'd apparently been prescribed a large dose of phenobarbital for his seizures.
Little Wheezy, the Chihuahua, did not receive the kind of medication that was now on his record.
Such a large dose of phenobarbital would not be used to treat such a small animal.
But it turns out a large amount of that same drug, phenobarbital, is what Michael has in his system.
It was clear that somebody did not want that record to be found, because it was clear once we found it that we would identify that the records had been doctored.
Now, Wheezy is just fine, but is that crumpled record in the trash just a clumsy attempt to cover up that missing phenobarbital?
Those were her drug logs. Those were her drug books. They weren't somebody else's. She's responsible for the drugs. She's responsible for the logs. She's responsible for trying to change the logs.
I believe that there were false documents written by you purporting to show that a Chihuahua named Wheezy was the one who received the drugs that actually killed your husband.
No, that's not true.
But you did falsify veterinary documents about the use of medication for your animals.
That's not true, though. The only thing that...
Did you not falsify documents?
No. No, there was nothing falsified.
And here's where things really go sideways. All along, Wendy has been claiming she thought Michael was murdered. But now, in the same interview, she's about to completely change her story. Somebody planned to kill him. Somebody had access to the drugs in the clinic. And only one person here is a vet. That was you.
But nobody takes into account that he had access to this. He's not the only one. Everybody at that clinic had access to this. But he certainly had access to this.
So why didn't you say that at the time? And you also basically, accused your mother. And only now do you realize that it might have been a fatal overdose?
I didn't know drugs were involved until I read it in the newspaper. That's how I found out the cause of death. My aunt called, whenever that was, 2-3 months after he was dead.
It appears that Wendy Davidson has changed her story from believing that one of her family members killed Mike, and that's why she disposed of the body, to now that possibly Michael either accidentally or intentionally took his own life.
So, could Michael have taken the drugs himself? The medical examiner on this case says that even if Michael used drugs, as Wendy alleges, they're not the typical kind of drugs that a user would go looking for.
If we're talking about drugs to go to sleep, generally we're not looking at pentobarbital or phenobarbital or phenytoin. This isn't generally what you take to decide to take a nap or go to sleep. Is that a possibility? Somebody could say that, but it didn't make sense.
Remember, Wendy says she allegedly saw Michael abusing alcohol and possibly drugs. She recalled caffeine pills and maybe ephedra.
What she wants us to believe is that Mike somehow made this huge leap from taking oral medications to injectable medications.
At this stage of the game, we all know that Wendy's a pathological liar. She has told so many different stories that you cannot believe anything that Wendy says.
The toxicology report and the missing euthanizing drugs are enough for the grand jury to indict Wendy for the murder of her husband.
Ultimately, authorities reject Wendy's claim that someone in her family was involved in Michael's murder.
But soon enough, Wendy finds herself in yet another mess. And this time, it's her son who's in danger.
Tristan was found on his little tricycle across 2 busy lanes of traffic, unsupervised, while his mother was in a bar.
You never want to give up that hope. But I knew in my own mind that I wasn't going to see Michael again, because I believed with all my heart that if Michael was alive, he would have contacted me.
It's too much loss for one man. You're not supposed to lose a child, ever. Parents are supposed to die before their children.
On the one hand, at least there's closure. You know Michael's been found. On the other hand, you now know that he's not alive.
I can't imagine what these parents go through that don't find their children. It's got to be the worst horror in the whole world, not knowing what happened to your child. I kind of count my blessings that we did find Michael.
Michael is buried in Maine with full military honors.
But a few months after Mike's funeral, his father Les gets a letter from Wendy, who's out on bond.
I was at Les's house, and he literally got a letter from Wendy. She basically said, you know, when this is over, I hope we can become a cheerful family again, and everybody can get along, and we'll have a good future.
I hope to come to Maine and spend time with you guys and, you know, either become or stay a part of the family. And, you know, why? Like,
this is the role playing that she's chosen to do. She has to ingratiate herself with Mike's family, with her family, playing the role of, you know, the victim here. Essentially, what she's saying is, Mike's left. I wanted this relationship to work. I loved my husband.
It's Wendy doing Wendy. This is what she does.
It's a hot summer night, and Wendy leaves her older son, Tristan, she thinks, asleep in bed, while she goes out to a local bar called Graham's Central Station.
Tristan was found on his little tricycle, having traveled across 2 busy lanes of traffic over to a shopping center, unsupervised.
Our waitress came out, got him, and called the police. The police recognized him, knew he was from across the street. They took him back to the clinic. Wendy pulled up about the same time, went to the police officer, said, oh, I just ran down to the pharmacy to give Tristan some medicine.
The policeman said, you could stop that because we know that you were at Graham Central Station. And she broke down and she was so sorry.
Wendy gets arrested again, this time for child endangerment.
if my opinion could get any lower, that's where it bottomed out. Because not only are you a horrible wife, you're a horrible mother.
In the end, the San Angelo Police Department decides not to charge Wendy with child endangerment.
Now, as prosecutors begin to plan for trial, there is one thing that's been eluding them, and that's motive. Why would Wendy have wanted Michael dead?
Based on what Wendy says, she has no motive to kill her husband, Mike. So we have to conjecture, would it relieve the stress in her household?
Or is it a motive as old as time itself? Is Michael worth more to Wendy dead than alive?
Congress added $100,000 to the SGLI, the military life insurance. It's $250,000 if your husband dies while he's in the military. She made sure that she was a beneficiary. So Michael called me before this ever happened. Dad, I got married. I have to change my beneficiary. I said, sure, I understand that. You've got to provide for your family if something should happen.
The trial date is set. The prosecution has, it thinks, a cut and dried case. That is until Wendy's defense team pulls an ace out of its sleeve. Is it possible that a key piece of evidence could be thrown out? Wendy, did you murder your husband?
I didn't.
If not you, then who?
The first thing that I would do if I was an investigator, if I found a body in a pond, of course you're going to think foul play.
And you're going to think the spouse.
That's always what they think. That's the first thing.
Because most often, it is the spouse.
Sure.
She's just kind of like, it's horrible, it's unbelievable, I know. Believe me, don't believe me, I wanted you to hear my side of the story. And that's a really hard thing to do convincingly if you're lying. Her point of view, is it reliable or unreliable? Is she lying or is she manipulating us? We have to go with the facts of the case.
Michael's family is feeling confident as the trial is about to begin.
Leading up to the trial, from what we had been informed, we were pretty certain she was going away for a long, long time.
But Wendy's defense quickly play their ace. They file a motion to suppress the evidence gained from the tracking device on her car, claiming it was illegally obtained.
Wendy Davidson's attorneys tried to argue that the evidence obtained from the GPS was improperly collected.
Generally, police officers need, by law, to get a court order to allow them to attach a tracker to a person's vehicle.
Now, Wendy is banking her whole future on this one legal technicality, and her lawyers are confident.
Don't worry, we're gonna get this whole thing tossed because they didn't have a warrant.
Without the evidence from the tracker, the prosecution would be struggling to make a case. Wendy would get off on a technicality.
Based on the fact that OSI followed the rule of law at the time that we gained the permissions and approval to utilize the tracking devices, I was not concerned with the outcome.
So it isn't the San Angelo police who put the tracker on the car, it's OSI, and they operate under different rules and regulations.
So we were looking for a deserter, and that was our reason why we utilized the tracking devices, to see if that would bring forth a discovery of Michael Severance.
And the judge rules in favor of the prosecution. The tracker was legal, and therefore the evidence gained via the tracker is admissible.
If they had succeeded, they probably would have taken the guts right out of the case against Wendy, because it was her movement in and around the stock pond and the ranch that led police to the discovery of Michael's body in the first place.
Wendy's defense has taken a huge hit. What happens next absolutely stuns the Severance family.
Last minute, we're sitting in a room waiting for the trial to start. And the DA comes in and has a conversation with Dad. And they usher us into the courtroom, and Wendy pled no contest.
So when Wendy's defense team loses this legal argument about the GPS trackers, it's really harmful to their case. At this point, her lawyers, based on the evidence that the prosecution has, recommends that Wendy take that plea. Basically saying, I'm not saying I committed this homicide. What I'm agreeing to is that if we were to go to trial, that the prosecution has enough evidence that I would likely be convicted.
The easiest way to explain that, from my understanding, is admitting guilt without admitting guilt.
The judge rules there is enough evidence to support the no contest plea. He finds Wendy guilty of murder. Her sentence, 25 years.
The truth is, once she took that plea, no contest, she was saying, in essence, she was guilty.
Those who were in the courtroom say they saw Wendy collapse onto the floor, sobbing. Her mom, Judy, is in tears. What was your reaction to the judge pronouncing you guilty?
I think I was just in shock, and I was horrified. I mean, by everything. I mean, I never went to trial. I never got to give my side of the story.
That plea deal leaves the Severance family feeling deeply unsatisfied.
She should have got life. The death penalty would have been fine with me. I don't understand it. You're somebody out fighting for your country. What more can you ask for of a person than to go fight for your country?
I don't think forgiveness is in my heart.
Wendy is taken to Tom Green County Jail where she lobs another grenade.
So she writes a letter to the judge and basically tells the judge, you can't send me to prison because I'm pregnant.
2 months after Wendy Davidson is sentenced to 25 years for murdering her husband, she's in her jail cell and picks up her pen. She's writing a last-ditch effort letter to her trial judge, pleading that he not send her to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, the TDC. And then another Wendy Davidson stunner.
In the letter Wendy writes to the judge, she says she's pregnant.
Even if that were true, it would be so easy to verify whether she was pregnant or not.
And Wendy now says that although she thought she was pregnant at the time, she was mistaken.
It wasn't true, and it didn't stop anything. She is a person who runs from responsibility.
When Wendy killed Michael, she hurt this community. She took a part of this community. And Lee, Maine's a small town. Everybody knows everybody.
There's a lot of collateral damage left in the wake of all of this, and we can't lose sight of the two other lives shattered. Those two boys, Tristan, now 20, and Shane, now 17. Do you have any contact with Shane?
I do. We have joint custody. The Davidsons have primary care, and I get visitation on all the holidays and spring break, and I get him in the summer.
Mike was definitely robbed of a lifetime of getting to know his fantastic son. And it's hurtful. It's painful. Because you'd love anything. I would give nothing more than to watch Mike be able to give his boy a hug.
I didn't just lose my brother. Dad didn't just lose his son. Shane didn't just lose his father. The world, the country, lost a soldier, lost one of the most decent human beings ever. For what? I don't know.
Even among all the endless futilities of homicides, this one's one of the most, if not the most futile that I've ever seen.
The Davidsons declined an interview request for this program. Wendy says she last spoke to her parents in 2009, more than 12 and a half years ago. She says she hasn't seen her sons since they were 2 and 5 years old. Are you hoping to be able to see them again one day too?
Yes. I would hope so. Yes.
At the start of our interview, Wendy told us she wanted to tell her side of the story. And now, having served 15 of her 25-year sentence, she still seems disappointed that she never got her day in court. And she still refuses to confess to Michael's murder. Would you say that in all of this story, Wendy Mae Davidson is a victim?
No. I think my husband was a victim. I think my children were victims. I think Mike's family are victims. I did what I did. I think it was horrible. I think that I made a bad choice. There were better choices to be made, but I still didn't kill him. What I did was horrible. There's no excuse. I mean, I might have had crazy reasons in my head, but there's no excuse.
Whatever Wendy might say she did or didn't do, the authorities have absolutely no doubts about the facts of this case.
I can speak to the fact that 100% certainty that we found no evidence that anybody else but Wendy Davidson was responsible for Michael's murder.
What strikes me after leaving the Gatesville Correctional Facility and then meeting Les is how raw the pain still is for Les Severance.
Wendy was kind of happy because she didn't get life. She got 25 years. She'll be out in a little while, walking the streets. Michael's not out. He got life. He's gone. She took his life. That's forever.
And we should note tonight that Wendy Mae Davidson will next be eligible for parole in 2024. Failing that, her prison sentence will end in 2031.
But whenever she is released, who knows what kind of job she may get. Her vet license has been revoked, but we've been told she has every intention of reapplying for it. That's our program for tonight. I'm Amy Robach.
And I'm David Muir. From all of us here at ABC News in 2020. Good night.
Robert Durst is a devilish character. In 1982, his wife disappears. Devious, malicious.
Since then, he's been suspected of killing a neighbor.
A fisherman discovered a headless, limbless torso here in the waters of Galveston Bay.
But this is a guy who doesn't believe that any rules apply to himself.
Neighbors called police, who found the writer dead of a single gunshot wound to the head.
I'm dumbfounded. I never thought that in 100 years that she would die that way.
He can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants to do it, to whoever he wants to do it to.
Because he was wealthy and he had the power to do it.
A very high-profile murder trial ended with a verdict that was so surprising the defendant appeared to be caught off guard.
He got a kick out of getting away with things.
Bob's problem is that he loves the attention.
Robert Durst's sense of invincibility. He thinks nothing sticks.
It was a huge blunder for Bob to appear in the jigs.
Jaws were on the floor. No one could believe what they'd just heard.
Robert Durst, recently the subject of a documentary series. Tonight, under arrest, I get called by my assistant DA. You better win this case. Do not let this narcissistic psychopath get away with what he has done.
I've never forgotten it. Susan Berman's father's favorite song was On the Sunny Side of the Street. So I always think of that when I think of her because it became her favorite song too.
I'm Officer Rashad Sharif from the Los Angeles Police Department. That was Christmas Eve, 2000, and it was a nice Southern California December. 70 degrees, clear skies.
The street there is one of the main thoroughfares from like West Hollywood area to the valley.
We received a radio call and we started heading that way up to the canyon.
It's a Beverly Hills zip code. It is a fairly affluent area because it's up in the hills.
The call was an open door where the neighbor had not seen their neighbor for a while and the dog is running around loose. There was a rear door that was open.
Then they went, and that's when they found the body of Susan Berman.
And her body is laying there, gunshot to the back of the head. The dog's bloody paw prints all around her body.
We discovered one shell casing.
Police found 55-year-old Susan Berman dead of a single gunshot wound to the head. Nothing was stolen, and the neighbors report having never heard a shot fired.
There was no forced entry in that house, so whoever came had to know her.
And there was no defensive wounds on her. And when her back was to him, he cowardly executed her by putting that gun to the back of her head and pulling the trigger.
About 2 days later, the Beverly Hills Police Department receives a rather intriguing piece of mail, and then the mystery deepens.
What the murderer did in LA was take notepaper and a green pen and wrote cadaver and her address and sent it to the Beverly Hills Police Department and spelled Beverly wrong.
It was kind of weird because we thought, who uses the word cadaver and who would send a letter to the Beverly Hills police? It's like somebody doesn't want her laying there for any length of time.
Little did Detective Coulter know that solving this case and bringing that someone to justice would take 20 years. The combined efforts of the LAPD and the FBI, 50 law clerks, 9 prosecutors, and a 2-year trial.
Susan was the only child of a major Vegas gangster. Her father, Davy Berman, they called him Davy the Jew.
And then the day that Bugsy Siegel was shot in L.A., him and 5 others walked into the Flamingo and took over the Flamingo.
She would do her homework in the casino counting room using the chips to do her math.
Her dad loved Susan, spoiled her rotten, and he was a quiet man, but very forceful and very well respected. And Susan just absolutely adored him.
When Susan was only 12, her father died on the operating table. He was in the hospital for routine surgery. And this was a huge blow to Susan. And it really marked her for the rest of her life.
Her mother couldn't handle it either. Within a year, when she was 13, her mother died, officially by suicide.
After her father died, Susan was living in Idaho with her father's brother, Chicky.
Chicky put her into college at UCLA, and that's where Susan met Bobby Durst. He was in a master's program for a year at UCLA, and she was getting her bachelor's degree. He came from money, she came from money. They both had led privileged childhoods. So Susan went on to UC Berkeley to get a master's degree in journalism.
When Susan graduated from Berkeley, she went to work for the San Francisco Examiner and ended up meeting Nick Chabon.
So I was with Susan Berman, and that's when she said to me, I got a friend I want you to meet. He's my best friend. We went to school together at UCLA. She says, you two are destined to be bad boys in love.
They got along like gangbusters. And of course, Susan was in the middle of all that. And so they were like the 3 musketeers.
I was starting in real estate advertising, and Bob is like a mogul in real estate. And he's the eldest son of the Durst family, and he is without question the heir to all this, until his wife disappeared. It changed everything.
Robert and Kathy Durst appeared to have the entire fairy tale.
Kathy Durst was my best friend, and the last conversation that I had with Kathy was a very powerful conversation.
According to Gilberta, she said, if anything happens to me,
You'll check it out. I'm afraid of what Bobby might do.
that was the last she ever heard from her again.
What's developed, say police, are questions about the mysterious disappearance of Durst's wife Kathleen in 1982, and most recently, the December 2000 execution-style murder of Susan Berman.
The relationship between those two cases are so interrelated. Kathy's death ultimately led to Susan's death.
You have to understand who he is
Do you know where your wife is?
before you can understand what he did.
organization is a very large real estate empire. They're kind of behind the scenes and quiet, unlike the Trumps. You don't see their names plastered all over buildings.
It's a billion-dollar company that owns some of the most prestigious properties in New York.
Seymour Durst, Bob's father, was the company's dynamo. He was the driving force.
They are responsible for the whole revitalization of Times Square.
Their skyscrapers helped form the New York skyline.
Robert Durst grew up in Scarsdale, New York, in a very affluent area. Bob was a difficult child. He didn't excel in school. He was socially separated from both his family and friends.
His mother either jumped or accidentally fell off the family roof at their house in Scarsdale, and Bob claims to have seen it at age 7.
Bob Durst grew up the oldest of 4 children.
And he was the one who was set to inherit it all. He was the one who was set to take over the family business.
Bobby Durst meets this beautiful woman, Kathleen McCormick. She was a tenant in one of the buildings his family owned in New York City.
They couldn't be more different. Robert Durst was Jewish, Kathy was Catholic, Bob came from a privileged life, Kathy came from a working class family.
She's 19, and Bob's almost 30. Bob was this, dashing, I'm gonna do whatever I want, and Kathy's a kid.
My sister Kathy, she always wanted to make a contribution. She started going to school at Western Connecticut State College. She got her 4-year degree in nursing. And she said, I want to be a doctor. I can give more. I've got more to give.
Kathy was a student at the Einstein Medical School in the Bronx.
She said to me, I'm going to be the first Durst to be an MD, a doctor. She goes, because in Jewish families, that's an honor.
Bobby and Kathy, from the beginning, seemed to have a wonderful marriage. It wasn't the money that she loved. She loved him.
Bob's father had this huge business that was growing, and he wanted his eldest son to work in the business.
But not only did he not like the real estate business, he wasn't really very good at it.
He would show up to work in shorts and a t-shirt, which is, the real estate business is not like that. It's a very formal business.
Bobby was a real weirdo. He did things like burp out loud and think it was funny.
He told us that he would pee in wastebaskets.
He can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants to do it. That's how he's lived his life. That's just Bob Durst.
And it wasn't that long before this outlandish behavior actually morphed into something far more serious and even dangerous.
There was the one incident at Christmas time when he wanted to leave a family get-together at Kathy's, and Kathy wasn't ready to leave, and he basically grabbed her by the hair and pulled her out.
And I remember January 31st of 1982. Kathy came for dinner and was quite on edge. Had been fighting with Bob for most of the weekend. Bob would call the house, I want you home now.
Kathy comes home to the cottage that she shared with Bob in South Salem, New York. She was angry that Bob had demanded that she come home. Kathy wanted to drive back into Manhattan so that she could go to school the next day.
According to Robert Durst, he takes her to the Katona train station to board a train bound for Manhattan. The next day, the dean of Kathy's medical school gets a call from a woman who claims to be Kathy Durst, complaining of a stomach ache, and said that she couldn't show up that day.
And Bob didn't report her missing until 5 days after Bob last saw her. And he didn't go to the police in South Salem. He went to the 20th precinct on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. This sent the investigation off on the wrong trajectory.
He brought a magazine in with his father and Harry Helmsley and Donald Trump's picture on the cover to say, "This is who I am."
He told me that he had not spoken to his wife in 4 or 5 days. But he went on to explain to me how she was a medical student and that she would take these clinical studies at hospitals and would remain in their dorms for days at a time. So it seemed reasonable to me at that point.
And there were doormen at Bob and Kathy's building in New York who were saying that Kathy came home that night.
The police believed Bob, and they only did their investigation in Manhattan.
So once the media got wind that Kathy had disappeared, there was a lot of interest in this case. And Susan Berman became Robert Durst's media spokesperson.
Susan was very smart. She's very manipulative.
Susan would shield him from the press and basically paint unflattering stories about Kathy, how she probably just ran off with someone.
The police did not have a firm grasp of what exactly had happened. And by the end of 1982, it was a cold case.
The Durst case came to my attention in 1999. It was just so interesting how she was never found in all these years. And looking at the case, it really piqued my interest, so I just started digging into things.
2 weeks ago, a fisherman discovered a headless, limbless torso here in the waters of Galveston Bay.
So I get a call that a guy named Bob Durst has been arrested in Galveston, Texas, of all places, for murdering his neighbor. And first thing I asked, is it our Bob Durst?
After Kathy goes missing, the police investigation went absolutely nowhere. And even though Bob Durst may have been looked at, there was nothing to formally charge him with anything to do with the disappearance of his wife.
In a newspaper interview with the New York Post, Robert Durst said he thought his wife was still alive, and he offered a reward to help find her.
The circle of friends immediately questioned why was it a missing persons and not a homicide. We were sure that our friend was dead. New York City police insisted they had no evidence to support that theory.
Nearly 2 decades later, a very astute New York State police detective named Joseph Becerra, he decides he's going to open up an investigation.
How can this woman just disappear off the face of the earth? She was about to graduate medical school. She had everything to live for.
He decided to reopen it with the graces of the then District Attorney of Westchester County, Janine Pirro.
We now are looking at this case differently. We're not sure that she left Westchester.
So Susan Berman was Bob's best friend. Susan acted as basically a spokesperson for Bob, basically to shield him from the press. She was key to everything we were looking for here in New York regarding Kathy's disappearance. She was one person I really wanted to speak to.
Stunningly, Susan Berman is murdered before detectives have an opportunity to talk to her.
When I got the news that Susan Berman was murdered, I felt like a punch in the gut.
He was extremely afraid of being arrested and extremely afraid of Janine Pirro.
And it's right at this time that Bob Durst simply disappears, until there's a shocking development just months later.
A 13-year-old boy was fishing with his father on the coast of Galveston when he noticed something in the water.
The first object the police pull out of the water is a triple-wrapped garbage bag.
The poor boy found a torso.
It was a small man. His legs and arms had been severed. His head was missing.
There was a mountain of evidence in those garbage bags.
pieces of trash from a certain address. Those items told the police the next place they needed to look.
And that address led police right to a rooming house where the victim, Morris Black, lived. They discovered a trail of blood that starts in Morris Black's house, crisscrosses down the hallway, and leads into the kitchen rented by a deaf-mute woman. But of course, that person was Robert Durst, dressed in drag.
Bob had rented this room in Galveston, posing as a mute woman by the name of Dorothy Siner. Dorothy was someone that he had attended high school with.
Robert Durst was in Galveston hiding from Ginny Pirro. Robert Durst would write notes to people, because of course they didn't want to use his lower voice.
One of the reasons that he did that was so he wouldn't sound like a man trying to be a woman.
Well, these two men, Morris and Bob, according to Bob, used to go across the causeway to Pelican Island to shoot Bob's guns, his handguns.
I had gotten to know Morris, and one day he said, "You have no idea the things that I know. I can never talk to anybody about this, and it's just killing me."
The problem for Bob is that Morris Black represented a connection between who he was and where he was.
Durst was worried that Morris Black knew who he was, and he was afraid that he would tell police.
Robert Durst became the prime suspect in the murder of Morris Black, so police wanted to find him right away.
Among the items recovered by police was a prescription for eyeglasses. They call the optometrist's office and tell him to be on the lookout. If this person comes to claim these glasses, call us. And that's exactly what happened.
The clerk called the police, and they were waiting outside for Bob. And they found inside his car a bow saw.
He had marijuana in the car, and he had a weapon that was illegal in Texas. So he was arrested for those. He was also arrested for the murder.
So Bob's bail was set at $300,000.
Detective Cody Kaslas made a wisecrack. "Well, you got it?" And Durst made a wisecrack back, "Not on me."
This money gets wired from New York, and he gets out on bail. At that point, they were like, who is this guy?
For him, $300,000 bail was chump change.
But instead of facing justice, he goes on the run.
Well, he got in his car, and he started driving. Ultimately, he had Morris Black's license and his ID, and he rented a car in Alabama. Meanwhile, there is a national manhunt underway to find Bob Durst.
Police wind up busting Robert Durst in a shoplifting incident in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. At a Wegmans grocery store, he is busted shoplifting a sandwich, a Band-Aid, and a newspaper.
When he stole that sandwich, he had $38,000 in the trunk of his car.
They realized, though, very quickly that this was no ordinary shoplifter. This was the man who was the subject of a nationwide manhunt, and they sent him back down to Texas to face justice.
There were reporters from all over the country coming to Galveston to watch this trial.
He gets on the stand, admits he killed her, admits he dismembered him. Bobby Durst is arrested for murder of his neighbor, who he chopped up and put his body parts in Galveston Bay.
But it wasn't until the fall of 2003 that the trial began.
Are we ready to bring the jury out?
I'm Susan Chris, and I'm the judge who presided over the Durst murder trial in Galveston, Texas. There were reporters from all over the country coming to Galveston to watch this trial.
One of the strangest courtroom cases in the country.
By now, it's getting a lot of coverage.
The millionaire black sheep Robert Durst, his fall from grace has all of New York talking.
Really, it was more about the murderer in this case. Like, what the hell happened to Bobby Durst?
There was a whole lot of people who thought that a guilty conviction for him was going to be a slam dunk.
Unlike with the disappearance of Kathy or the murder of Susan Berman, there was a mountain of evidence tying Bob to the murder scene.
Robert Durst had the luxury of hiring a Fort Knox of defense attorneys. These are some really high-profile guys.
He hires the two best legal gunslingers in the state of Texas, Dick DeGuerin and Dave Ramsey. And then to round out the trio of lawyers, they brought in Chip Lewis.
Everybody in Galveston's been real nice to us.
Dick DeGuerin is very much a Texas trial lawyer. He's got the cowboy hat. He is disciplined. He is professional to an extreme.
As far as a defense, first we had to divorce the bizarre facts from the case, from what actually happened when Morris Black died.
This case is not about what Bob Durst did after Morris Black died.
From the get-go, Durst and his lawyers admitted that he killed Morris Black, but they claimed that he acted in self-defense.
The gun went off with Morris Black's finger on the trigger.
Where the defense's argument involves self-defense, it's not uncommon for defendants to take the stand, and Robert Durst did just that in dramatic fashion.
He gets on the stand, admits he killed him, admits he dismembered him.
Durst spoke candidly in court today, taking jurors through the pitfalls of his life, from his battle with bulimia as a child to his ongoing battle with his addiction to marijuana and alcohol.
Dick DeGuerin staged a pretty dramatic reenactment of the dispute that broke out between Black and Durst.
And you grabbed him like that and wrestled him and you tumbled to the ground. Would you be acting reasonably?
Once the issue is fairly raised of self-defense, then it's incumbent on the prosecution to disprove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Every little saw mark in each and every one of those leg bones and arm bones has got a whole lot of intent in it.
The state just thought it was going to be impossible for anyone to convince a jury that a case where you cut the body up and you took the head away could have been self-defense.
Don't cut somebody up, another human being, into pieces, bag them up, dump them in the bay when you act in self-defense.
The jury deliberated several days over this. There's a point where I thought they might end up being hung.
We're all sitting there figuratively chewing our fingernails.
Good morning. You may all be seated. Well, the jury has sent a note indicating that they have a verdict.
And they give it to the clerk, and the judge looks at it.
Will the defendant please rise?
And kind of pause for just an instant.
Will the jury find the defendant, Robert Durst, not guilty?
When this verdict was read aloud and Robert Durst was acquitted, you could hear the gasps in the courtroom. Jaws were on the floor. No one could believe what they'd just heard.
A very high-profile murder trial ended with a verdict that was so surprising the defendant appeared to be caught off guard.
Your client sure seemed shocked when he heard the verdict, were you?
I wasn't shocked, and I don't think his expression was one of shock. It was one of great relief.
We could not convict him. He is not guilty.
I wouldn't be asking him to escort my daughter to her senior prom this year, but Durst is not the only crazy person in Galveston.
The defense of self-defense worked in Galveston. You have laws in Texas that allow not only defending yourself and others, but your property.
Although Bob was acquitted, there were still two other charges lodged against him. Tampering with evidence, meaning cutting up Morris Black's body, and bail jumping. Ultimately, Bob pleaded guilty to those charges and served some more time in jail before he was free.
By the time Bob was released in 2006, Westchester, New York police had not yet announced developments in the Kathy Durst investigation, and it seemingly went cold again. Around the same time, the Durst organization cut ties with Bob in return for a $65 million payout.
Bob loved the attention he got after the verdict.
They even make fun of him on Saturday Night Live.
What's your name, bud?
My name is Robert Durst.
Law and Order featured a Durst storyline.
You testified that you dismembered Mr. Barry's body because, quote, you knew what the police would think.
And in 2010, the legal saga involving Robert Durst was encapsulated in a movie.
I had followed the story of Bob Durst when it happened. I was very interested in it. So we wrote a screenplay. That's All Good Things.
All Good Things, starring Ryan Gosling as Bobby Durst.
I'm not going to be able to subsidize your lifestyle, which I don't think that you want. I don't want that.
Kirsten Dunst played Kathy.
It won't be like when you grow up.
What do you know about it?
All Good Things was a semi-fictionalized telling of the Bob Durst story, but it put him at the center of 3 murders.
Later, I found out that he'd gotten a copy of the script, even though the script was on lockdown. Nothing's on lockdown in Hollywood. He somehow knew somebody, and he was able to get a copy of the script, and he read it, and he was very intrigued by it. Bob called us right before All Good Things premiered, and he wanted to see it. He was in Los Angeles, so we drove over to a studio, and we arranged for him to have a screening.
And after seeing the movie, he made what is probably the blunder of his life.
In 2010, All Good Things is released. The movie is well received, but the person who had the most praise for this movie was, believe it or not, Robert Durst himself. And he enjoyed the movie so much that after watching it, he reached out to the movie's producers, Mark Smerling and Andrew Jarecki, and sparked a relationship with them.
Well, it became very clear to me that Andrew and Bob connected in a way that I did not connect. They both come from extraordinarily wealthy families.
Robert Durst grew to trust Andrew Jarecki and Mark Smerling and agreed to tell his story in his own words.
So later that December, Bob sat down for an entire weekend giving an interview at a hotel in Santa Monica.
The opportunity to sit down with him in an open interview situation seemed irresistible. We did 3 full days with him. And Bob is very open. He's almost glib. I always felt like Bob had a compulsion to confess.
I disagree with the idea that Bob was trying to confess. Bob's problem is that he loves the attention, loves it. It was like a drug to him.
Those interviews became the documentary that we all know as The Jinx.
Bob Durst seems to be weighed down heavily by his life and his decisions. And I think he always saw himself as a jinx. Everything he touched fell apart or exploded.
So it's very obvious in the first interview that the Jinx did with Bob Durst what kind of little tics he displayed when he would sit down.
When he starts to get nervous, he starts to burp a lot. And stretch and yawn. And he talks to himself.
His face would twitch and he would blink. You had to really look at and figure out how much was true and how much wasn't.
Now Jarecki and Smerling have all this footage, 20 hours of interviews with Bob Durst. The next objective is to get friends and family and associates to tell their part of the story. That was not going to be an easy task. In fact, it took 4 years.
In 2011, we started doing interviews. One of the interviews is Sarah Kaufman, who is Susan Berman's. He's not adopted by Susan, but might as well have been adopted son. I stayed in LA to keep doing some research, and Sarah called me the next day, and he said he'd found something. He said, "Can you come by?" And I said, "Sure." So you can see in the Jinx, I go by, and Sarah shows me this letter, and the writing on the letter is identical almost to the writing on this cadaver note that had been sent to the Beverly Hills Police Department after Susan was murdered. We fly back to New York, we put in a safe deposit box, and we sit down and we go, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do next?" We realized we had something that was evidence in a murder trial.
Every documentary filmmaker hopes to find that golden nugget, that unique thing that blows the project wide open. They could never have imagined what was about to happen. They take these 2 identical envelopes and plan to show them to Bob Durst with camera rolling. It did not disappoint.
In the Jinx, Bobby denies that he wrote the note, but he says whoever sent that note is the murderer. Well, Andrew Jarecki says to him, "Well, what about this?"
They put up the 2 envelopes, which were so startlingly alike. The block lettering was the same. The telltale misspelling of Beverly was also the same. And Bob looked a little bit stunned and flustered, and they asked him to identify which was which.
Can you tell me which one of these you wrote, or which one you didn't write? No.
This was the dilemma. They had discovered a new piece of evidence, and it was remarkable. It wasn't the whole case, but it was a remarkable piece of evidence. So where does the line between their obligation as a journalist and their obligations as a good citizen begin?
We decided that we would give it to law enforcement at some point.
When we left Mark Smerling and Andrew Jarecki after first seeing the footage of some of the things that Bob had said, after seeing the cadaver note, John and I absolutely knew Robert Durst is good for this murder.
For the next 2 years, LAPD is keeping a watchful eye tracking his cell phone. Now, the prosecutors, meanwhile, are building their case. Andrew Jarecki and Mark Smerling are wading through hours and hours and hours of footage. And then they make another remarkable discovery.
We had done the last interview with Bob. The process is that when we're doing the interview, there's multiple mics, multiple cameras. There's a mic overhead. Bob's got a radio mic, which is a wireless mic pinned to him. Bob goes into the bathroom, comes out of the bathroom, I shoot him, he leaves, and that day's over. The footage goes back to the editors. And one day I hear this scream from the back editing room. One of the editors, she comes out, she goes, "You gotta come back here." And I go back, and she plays me the end of the interview. You can hear the click of the bathroom door, and he goes, "There it is, record." Of course. I'm like, oh my God. And then the tape stops. Done. That was recorded when the interview was recorded in 2012. We didn't discover it until 2014. So it was 2 years after the interview that we discovered the bathroom recording.
So the big news was that in 2015, HBO was going to bring out this new 6-part documentary called The Jinx, The Life and Deaths of Robert Durst. Their promos were great, and it was up on a big billboard in Times Square, which is Durst territory.
There's a big ad campaign and lots of anticipation leading up to the series. It finally premieres, but meanwhile, prosecutors have a big concern. Bob Durst is out there, free and with lots of cash.
Our concern was that what's going to happen is once the Jinx airs, Bob is going to end up taking off for Cuba.
After every episode of The Jinx, I was talking to Bob, and he still felt that he was in pretty good shape after episode 4. But when I called him to talk about episode 5, I could tell he was agitated. And I knew I wasn't going to be talking to Bob Durst ever again.
He realized the gravity of what he had said, and he went on the run once again.
The FBI is pinging his phone to keep tabs on Bob. And they notice he's driving east, and suddenly it goes blank. Bob's turned off his phone, and they have no idea where he is.
I feared Bob Durst. He could hire anybody to do anything, and I was scared of him.
This was the most sensational, the most twisted, the most bizarre story I've ever covered in my career.
It was a huge blunder for Bob to appear in The Jinx.
And you've got this rich guy with all the power in the world.
Bob is very cunning and manipulative.
Robert Durst, a real estate heir, under arrest for a murder that happened 15 years ago.
Charged with killing his friend Susan Berman.
And he murdered her. Here's my best friend, boom.
The Susan Berman murder, the Kathy Durst murder.
They belong together.
He feared that some of these witnesses might get whacked.
He said, "Hey, Nikki, guess what? Cutting up a body is only a misdemeanor here in Texas." He thought that was pretty funny.
But this is a guy who doesn't believe that any rules apply to himself. That's just Bob Durst.
It was clearly a note of what to do to dispose of a body.
Do not let this narcissistic psychopath get away with what he has done.
Robert Durst has this sense of invincibility. He crawled under the radar for so many decades.
In 1982, his wife, Kathy, disappears. Nobody thought she disappeared. Something terrible happened to Kathy.
Even though Bob Durst may have been looked at as a suspect or a person of interest, there was nothing to formally charge him.
The case just went cold, as though Kathy fell off the face of the earth.
What happened to Kathleen Durst? State police are taking a fresh look at the case.
And there is one person who could crack the case wide open.
Susan Berman was Bob's best friend. I think she was key to everything we were looking for here in New York regarding Kathy's disappearance.
55-year-old Susan Berman found dead of a single gunshot wound to the head.
When I got the news that Susan Berman was murdered, I felt like a punch in the gut.
10 months after Susan's body is found, there's another incident, this time in Texas.
Galveston police say Robert Durst killed his next-door neighbor and dumped his body into Galveston Bay.
There was a mountain of evidence tying Bob to the murder scene. This seemed like an open and shut case.
May the jury find the defendant, Robert Durst, not guilty.
Robert Durst is acquitted of murder in a verdict that not only shocked Robert Durst, but shocked the entire world.
Bob thought that he was the smartest one in the room, and he probably thought, why not give my side? Let me appear on this program. I can con them just like I conned everyone else in my life.
It was a huge blunder for Bob to appear in The Jinx. That's what spurred LA to reopen the investigation.
The Jinx producers shared information with the LA prosecutors that they'd uncovered during production. Both an apparent bathroom confession from Bob and a note that seemed to link him to Susan Berman's murder.
This cadaver letter, this big reveal on The Jinx, turned out to be the smoking gun that prosecutors were looking for.
We were shocked that it takes Bob seeing it on TV to go, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. But that's what happened.
The Los Angeles Police Department detectives were monitoring Bob, and they know that he's very likely going to run.
Knowing full well that Bob Durst has money and means to get out of Dodge, the FBI and the LAPD want to keep their eyes on him as much as possible. The only real way to do that is through his cell phone.
And they notice that Bob has gotten into his car and he's driving east, and suddenly it goes blank. Bob's turned off his phone and they have no idea where he is. And I thought, oh, he's gonna run.
Bob had turned off his cell phone, so investigators couldn't locate him. And so what happened was he called his voicemail from a phone at the New Orleans Marriott Hotel, and that gave investigators a lead.
So 2 FBI agents went to the JW Marriott, and they went up to the desk, the front desk, and they asked the clerk, so, do you have a Bob Durst registered here? No. Do you have Dorothy Simon? No. And they go through 10 more aliases that Bob had used at one time or another. And as they're standing there trying to figure out their next step, who comes waltzing through the door? None other than Bob Durst.
Once investigators get their chance to search the room, they find a gold mine of evidence of a man hoping to be on the run.
They find a latex mask, a professional one that you could pull over and look like a completely different person. They find money in the hotel room. They find maps, including a big map of the Southeast. They handcuff him to a chair, and Bob happens to mention, oh, by the way, in my jacket in the closet is a gun.
Robert Durst, a real estate heir and recently the subject of a documentary series, tonight under arrest for a murder that happened 15 years ago.
The 71-year-old was apprehended at this New Orleans hotel where he was registered under a fake name, Everett Ward.
As soon as the FBI agents detain Bob, the call goes to LA to say, okay, we got him on your murder warrant.
On that Saturday afternoon, I get called by my assistant DA, who tells me, okay, we just arrested Bob Durst. You got what you want. You better win this case.
When Robert Durst got arrested, that was the moment for Lewin to take advantage of his detention, and he raced down to New Orleans to interview him.
This is a crazy situation. Here, Bob, who's well acquainted with law enforcement and the legal system, who is not demanding that he lawyer up.
You have the right to the presence of an attorney before and during any questioning. Do you understand?
I understand.
Okay.
My goal was, how can I get him to talk to me? What can I do? And I knew that Bob Durst's favorite topic of conversation is Bob Durst.
There's no question that of any suspect I've ever dealt with, you are the most interesting.
Bob understood that we had substantial evidence against him.
You'd like some details from me if I knew about where Kathy's body is.
And about what happened to Susan.
And about what happened to Susan.
And you would agree that you're in the position, if you want, to tell me more than you have so far.
About that, I'm not about to go that far.
Okay.
Durst skirts around the issue of potentially getting a deal from Lewin. And so it begs the question, why are you trying to cut a deal before you're charged if you're truly innocent?
Well, you asked me what I thought you wanted to hear. I think what you wanted to hear is, what did you do with Kathy?
Right.
If I tell you those things, I'm being guilty.
Originally, my thought was that I was only 10 or 20 minutes away from a confession. Over time, what I've realized, Bob will let you get down to the 5-yard line pretty easily and you think you're about to score. You're not going to score. He really doesn't start really playing defense until he gets to the 5.
I'm not about to say to you, John, this is it without my lawyer.
Okay.
I think there's two sides to Bob Durst. There's this underlying side that feels guilty for it, has a compulsion to confess. But on top of that is a self-preservation side.
Robert Durst, the millionaire heir, is in court this morning in New Orleans for a bond hearing. His lawyers trying to free him so he can fight those murder charges in Los Angeles.
Bob Durst didn't kill Susan Berman. He's ready to end all the rumor and speculation and have a trial. But we're frustrated because the local authorities are considering filing charges on him here and holding him here.
Bob Durst was convicted of the gun charges and is sentenced to 85 months behind bars.
He was held up in New Orleans. So that is a absolutely massive gift, essentially, by Durst. He gave us extra time.
Now the prosecution has the time that it needs to track down witnesses and find evidence that builds a bulletproof case against Robert Durst.
There were a number of witnesses who were very reluctant to come forward. If Bob can get off in Galveston, he's capable of anything.
Robert Durst is being held in a Los Angeles jail tonight. He's expected back in court in LA in 2 weeks with a trial not until next year.
Durst is due to be arraigned on Monday, charged with killing his friend Susan Berman.
I think Susan wanted to be stood up for. I think the trial, of course, was a great way to honor her.
This trial was as high stakes as it could get, not only for Robert Durst, but for the lead prosecutor, John Lewin, who spent years focusing on this case.
If there was any DA to handle that case, John Lewin was the one to handle it. John is going back and re-interviewing witnesses. You know, you got to remember, a lot of those people, when we interviewed them, you're talking about in 2001.
Witnesses may be dead, evidence is lost, people don't remember. You have all these obstacles in an old case.
And there were a number of witnesses who were very reluctant to come forward. If Bob could get off in Galveston, he's capable of anything.
The law allows something called conditional testimony.
A conditional witness is someone who is 65 or older, and you're fearful that they might not make it to trial.
Lewin feared that because of Durst's resources, that some of these witnesses might get whacked.
You put those witnesses on the stand, but there's no jury. They testify, it's videotaped, and then later it's played back when the jury is actually present.
Yes, I was uncomfortable coming forward. I feared Bobby Durst. He's very wealthy. He has long arms. He could hire anybody to do anything, and I was scared of him.
Did you, in your mind, come to believe who was responsible for Susan's?
Yeah. Bobby Durst.
Miriam testified that at the time of Kathy's disappearance, Susan anxiously confided in her that she had just done a favor for Durst.
She said I did something to him. Didn't bother me if anything ever happened to me, Bobby did. I remember her saying this to me. I didn't know how important it was. And I didn't think that anybody that I knew in my world would murder somebody.
Pressure was mounting on the prosecutors and investigators working this case to find witnesses to take the stand. And that leads them directly to Nick Chavin.
Art, I'm known in show business.
Nick Chavin was most definitely a creative character. He was a satirist. And it turns out that Susan Berman was actually writing a story about his musical aspirations. And then Susan introduces him to Bob, and the three of them are tight, thick as thieves, the best of friends.
Yeah, these were my two best friends. They were my two best friends, which is a very strange position.
Nick wanted nothing to do with this trial. Nick would have been very happy to just go on the rest of his life and take these secrets to the grave.
Lewin did everything in the world to get me to talk, and I wouldn't answer his phone calls, and I wouldn't take his phone calls.
Lewin realizes that He's got to draw Nick out.
I'm working for Miller Advertising, and one fine day, the head of the company came into my office, and on his finger was a sticky. He said, "You've got to call this guy." I said, "Who?" He said, "He's a district attorney in LA. You got to call." I says, "Why?" He says, "You have to call him."
Hello. Hey, Nick, you have John Lewin, Habib Balian, and George Shamlian on. Okay. Nick could have told us, hey, listen, I don't know anything. But instead, Nick said, I'm not saying that I don't have information. I'm just not ready to share it yet.
I tried to answer your questions the best I could.
Also, that's everything you know about Bob's possible involvement in either Kathy or Susan's murder, and your knowledge of it.
I don't know if I have or not. I thought I did. Maybe I didn't. I don't know.
He pulled all kinds of things. He says, "Wasn't Susan your dear friend?" "Yes." "And Bobby's your dear friend. So one of them kills the other. You got to make a choice."
Honestly ask yourself, is Bob worth it? If the roles were reversed, would Bob do that for you?
Lewin is a master at ripping off the bandage, as he described it. Just rip off the bandage, Nick. He got me to cop to what I knew.
Nick Chavin's been carrying around this soul-scorching secret for a long time.
And I told Nick, and all that I'm hoping before you testify under oath, that you're honest.
Now he's ready to let it go.
I've been covering big criminal cases for more than 2 decades, and this was the most sensational, the most twisted, the most bizarre story
I was going to shoot myself on both sides of the head
I've ever covered in my career. There will never be another legal saga like this.
To build a solid case against Bob Durst, John Lewin needed to assemble a stellar team of prosecutors.
There were actually a total of 8 prosecutors who worked on this case at different times. We also had probably a total of close to 50 law clerks.
It was very clear from the beginning that these 3 cases were interrelated, and for the jury to properly determine the truth, they were going to have to get the whole picture.
We were trying to get the jury to understand that this is a guy who doesn't believe that any rules apply to himself. That's just Bob Durst. He's the most self-involved person I've ever seen.
So the trial in Los Angeles is high stakes for both sides.
Bob Durst was already in prison for 6 years by the time Susan's murder trial started.
This was a man who was in his late 70s, who was battling cancer that appeared to be in the advanced stages.
He was frail. He was weak. He was being wheeled in and out of court. He had tubes and medical devices hanging from him.
People were wondering every day, is this guy even going to live to be able to see the duration of this trial?
Mr. Lewin will make his opening statement first, and that's because the people have the burden of proof. After a year of false starts due to COVID and, of course, Bob's bad health, opening statements at the trial finally began.
So there's going to be 3 killings that we are going to prove.
Prosecutors also shared their theory for the reason Berman was murdered. Remember that 1982 phone call from Kathy to her med school claiming she was too sick to work? Well, prosecutors say it was really Susan Berman pretending to be Kathy, giving Bob a phony alibi, and they argue Susan's complicity also made her a target.
Everything starts with Kathy Durst's disappearance and death at the hands of Mr. Durst, and Mr. Durst alone. And after that, he had to kill Susan Berman because he feared that she was going to talk. And then he had to kill Morris Black because Morris Black knew who he was and was putting pressure on him.
Almost from day one, prosecutors made it clear that Durst's interview in the Jinx would be a key piece of evidence.
All of the video that you will will see has been unedited.
And that so-called cadaver note, it would be the linchpin in their case against him.
From the very beginning, his stance was always, I'm not going to show you the jinx. I'm going to show you the raw material.
This is what he said in 2010. This is the interview with Andrew Jarecki and Mark Smerling.
Well, to begin with, you didn't write the cadaver note, is that what you're saying? I didn't write the cadaver note.
In 2012, Mr. Durst made clear, the evidence is going to show that this is an absolutely true and correct statement. And this is what he said.
You're writing a note to the police that only the killer could have written.
On day 2, defense attorney Dick DeGuerin throws his cowboy hat into the ring, and he's hoping that same Texas charm that worked down in Galveston will work in LA.
You got DeGuerin coming into the courtroom just like he did in Galveston. He's got his Stetson on, he's got his cowboy boots on. It charmed them in Texas.
I'm Dick DeGuerin. I'm from Texas. I don't have an accent. At least I don't think I do.
It meant zero in Los Angeles.
He was a cowboy at heart and a very, very good defense attorney with an incredible reputation. Bobby Durst got the best.
Mr. Lewin has made a fine presentation. Very skillful, very slick. Mine's not going to be that slick.
DeGuerin's strategy was no evidence is evidence. If you have no physical evidence, then that means that Robert Durst did not murder Berman.
The evidence is lacking. The evidence isn't there.
This is a heavyweight bout between two people that, were at the top of their game.
Bob, did you love Kathy?
Yes, very much.
Have you ever loved anybody in your life more than Kathy?
No.
Did you kill her?
No.
We can show, without question, that Bob is responsible for Kathy's death. We can show circumstantially that Bob got rid of her body. Was it murder or was it manslaughter? We have no idea.
Now, the prosecution focuses squarely on the Berman murder. They play the testimony of their star witness, Nick Shaven, best friend to both Bob Durst and Susan Berman.
How do you feel about me? I feel like it's something I have to do.
Sometime in late 2014, did you have a dinner with Robert Durst?
Yes.
So Nick recounts to Lewin exactly what happened.
Will the jury find the defendant?
I hadn't seen him in 10 years, and he called. He'd been acquitted in Galveston. And he said, "Hey, Nicky, guess what? Cutting up a body is only a misdemeanor here in Texas." He thought that was pretty funny. So now he said, "Let's have dinner to celebrate. I'm coming to New York."
They go to dinner at a little restaurant called Barrowine, a French bistro. And they're having dinner. But as they put on their coats and they're leaving, Nick realizes they haven't talked about Susie or Kathy.
He walked out the door, and on the sidewalk, I said, "You wanted to talk about Susan?" And Bob said, "I had to. It was her or me. I had no choice."
That stunned me. Then I said, "You said also you wanted to talk to me about Kathy." And he turned on his heel and began walking north away from me. I said, Bob, and he didn't answer. He just kept walking.
So it's a very dramatic moment, and it's basically a confession.
Lewin was masterful. The evidence was unbelievable.
Now it's time for the defense to take its turn. And just as they had done in Galveston, they called defendant Robert Durst to testify.
Bob, did you kill Susan Berman?
No.
Do you know who did?
No, I do not.
And for For the most part, it sounded quite reasonable.
I got the idea of sending a letter to the Beverly Hills police that Susan was dead in her house.
What was your state of mind?
I was trying to decide if anyone would believe that I killed Susan Berman, because I had no reason to kill Susan Berman.
Then, John Lewin takes his turn.
You may commence your cross-examination of the witness, Mr. Lewin.
And he's just starting to warm up.
I want to congratulate you. You set the perjury record.
Cross-examination begins in the Robert Durst murder trial. Durst's attorneys wrapped up his direct examination of his client.
Mr. Durst, Mr. DeGuerin called you Bob. Do you want me to call you Bob? Do you want me to call you Mr. Durst? What would you prefer?
How about sir?
You can call me sir. He becomes very hostile right off the bat, and it was, downhill from there. Would you lie under oath to help your case?
Yes.
Throughout 9 days of cross-examination, Lewin repeatedly catches Durst in lies, showing that he has been lying for years and that he would be willing to protect himself by lying.
Did you not say that you would lie about whether you murdered Susan Berman, whether you murdered Kathy Durst, and whether you murdered Morris Black?
If I had killed them, I would lie about that.
Lewin must have been doing cartwheels inside his body because that was a gift. In other words, I'm a big fat liar.
When he admitted to John Lewin that he would perjure himself, I looked at Mr. DeGuerin because, they had lost control of their own, client.
I think I need to congratulate you. You filled up 18 lines on my tablet.
And I want to congratulate you. You set the perjury record.
Your Honor, I have a motion.
You got away with that.
It was very tense between Robert Durst and John Lewin.
Lewin confronts Durst about a piece of evidence in Durst's own handwriting. It was referred to as the dig note, and it was found in his trash can not long after Kathy's disappearance. Written on it were a number of words, including town dump, bridge, dig, boat, shovel, among other things.
The dig note was very bad for Robert Durst. It was clearly a note of what to do to dispose of a body.
So, Mr. Durst, would you agree this looks like a list of how you would get rid of a body?
That's what it looks like to you.
Durst tried to write off the note as nothing sinister. It was just a mundane to-do list.
Bridge is an abbreviation of Bridgehampton. DIG is for digital. Boat is the sailboat. I needed to go to the town dump. Shovel with the snow shovels.
One of the most, I think, entertaining or hilarious parts of the whole trial was how Durst sort of reverse engineer the meaning of everything on that dig note. But that's his mentality. I'm Bob Durst. I can do and say whatever I want.
Lewin went on to question Durst about the now famous smoking gun moment from the Jinx.
All right, Mr. Durst, I want to talk about what has been referred to as the bathroom audio. You said, there it is, you're caught, correct?
I accept that.
And you would agree that while you were in the bathroom, Mr. Durst, you said the words, killed them all, of course, correct?
I think what I said was, they'll all think I killed them all.
Can we cue it up, please? I want you to listen, Mr. Durst. So you think that you added, they'll all think
before the words, "I killed them all," of course. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Please play it again. Please play it right before. I want you to listen very carefully. I want you to tell me when you hear any of the words you just described. You understand, Mr. Durst, that your attorneys have already stipulated that what we just played is unaltered, unedited footage.
I don't see the mic pick up everything I said.
And throughout the trial, Lewin continued to remind jurors that Durst is a self-admitted liar.
Would you agree that the admissions that you've made about your prior perjury are extremely relevant for somebody assessing your credibility?
Yes.
Lewin had Durst in the palm of his hands. There were so many instances where Durst was tripped up on the stand and made admissions.
But would jurors agree and put an end to Robert Durst's decades of evading justice?
Clerk will please read the verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Robert Durst.
This was a case that was stranger than fiction. But what this case did above all was it resurfaced secrets from the past.
Bob showed a remarkable facility to make up stories at the drop of a hat and to pack them full of details, which makes you think they must be true.
Listen to what he says about the discovery of Susan Berman's body.
Was she cold to the touch? Was she warm to the touch? Could you tell?
I put my hand over her face. I might have left that out to see if she was breathing, to see if I could feel breath, and it felt cold.
And the most compelling part to me of the cross-examination was when he was talking about finding her body.
Her breath filled the face felt cold.
She's dead. What do you mean her breath felt cold? Was she breathing on you when you got there?
No, she was not breathing.
So how can her breath be cold when she's dead? She's a stiff.
I put my hand on her face, and it was cold.
He slipped. I mean, he just absolutely slipped. I don't think you could have said anything more incriminating if you had a Hollywood scriptwriter right now.
His whole thing is to give as many details as possible to the lie. And the problem with that is the more lies you have, the more opportunity for reality to intersect with the lie and prove that you're lying.
Had you made plans to spend Christmas with Susan Berman?
Yeah.
Bobby had told her he was going to come to California, and she didn't know when he was going to arrive exactly. And she told friends, hey, we're going to get together, but we don't know exactly when.
Mr. Lewin, you may resume your cross-examination of Mr. Durst.
In a coup de grace, to me, they pull out Susan's day planner.
Mr. Durst, you recognize this to be Susan's handwriting, correct?
It might be Susan's handwriting.
She wrote everything down in there. Everything was there. All her appointments and even small to-do tasks were in there as well.
That's important because Durst insists that he came out west just to take a pre-planned trip with Berman up the California coast, while the prosecution had a totally different explanation. They were convinced that Bob Durst came west for one reason: to murder Susan Berman.
We're going to go turn to the 22nd. This is the day that you originally were supposed to meet Susie Berman. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you see any notation on the 22nd, Mr. Durst, that references you?
I do not specifically see anything describing the fact that I was going to arrive that evening.
That calendar told the jury Bob was lying. Susan Berman wasn't going up north with him on a trip. She was getting her hair done.
Mr. Durst, this is my last question. Did you kill Susan Berman?
No.
But if you had, you would lie about it, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
After a trial that lasted 24 months, the prosecution finally rested its case.
This case can be summed up to you in 9 simple words. It was her or me. I had no choice.
This man murdered Susan Berman. He murdered her. Do not let this narcissistic psychopath get away with what he has done, what he did to Susan Berman.
But one of the most powerful arguments from Robert Durst's legal team came during the closing arguments. Dick DeGuerin looks at the jury and says to them, "We do not convict folks based on made-for-TV movies." And that was a reference to the media frenzy that surrounded the Jinx documentary.
9 days of beating up of a sick old man that can't defend himself. I've known him for 20 years, and I am proud to stand before you and defend Robert Durst when almost no one in the world would do so.
The jury was out a few days, a reasonable amount of time.
The verdict came in, and Durst was exposed to COVID and couldn't be in the courtroom.
But Judge Wyndham refuses to delay the reading of the jury's verdict for one more moment.
Clerk, will you please read the verdict?
We, the jury, find the defendant, Robert Durst, guilty of the crime of first-degree murder of Susan Berman. Now to a court case that has garnered headlines across the country for decades. Overnight, a jury convicted Robert Durst of first-degree murder in the shooting death of his best friend.
And I remember I was at a gathering when I got the phone call about it. And I went into another room and just teared up.
We are extremely gratified and appreciative of the verdict that the jury reached in this case. We think that it was supported by the evidence.
Once I saw the evidence for each of the 3 crimes, I felt like it was pretty clear and overwhelming.
To me, he confessed 3 times. On tape, when he said, killed them all. Confession number 2 was when he admitted to writing the cadaver note. And number 3, it was either her or me. I had no choice.
Nobody saw Bobby Durst's reaction to the guilty verdict. But I can tell you what everybody else's reaction was. Hallelujah. Finally.
Now, that's not the end of the story, though, because there's never an end of the story.
He's getting away with another get-out-of-jail-free card, if you will, once again.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for the sentencing proceedings. It's the judgment and sentence of this court, Mr. Durst, that you be imprisoned in the state prison for the term prescribed by a law, that is, life in prison.
Robert Durst was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, never to run away again.
I think everybody felt justice was being served in the fact that he was tried, convicted, and that put closure on a lot for a lot of people.
The defendant, Robert Durst, is committed to the custody of the sheriff for delivery to the Department of Corrections forthwith.
I went to the mausoleum and was able to go visit Susie and tell her that she can lay her head down and rest easy now.
I still miss Susan, and I feel so bad that she's gone.
I think she would be validated by the people who came to stand up for her and who have been standing for her. Kathy's brother, Jim McCormick, has been hoping for justice for his sister. He felt, a conviction in Susan's case is like a conviction for my sister, too. They went to the Westchester County prosecutor. We want an indictment on Kathy's murder, and they got it.
A second-degree murder indictment tonight against real estate heir Robert Durst.
One of Durst's LA trial lawyers, Chip Lewis, called this charge fake news.
things he said on the stand at the Los Angeles trial, we came to the conclusion that we did have enough to charge him with murder and take it to trial.
But by the time this started to play out in the courts of New York, it was too late.
Breaking news, real estate heir and convicted murderer Robert Durst has died. The 78-year-old went into cardiac arrest and could not be revived.
Robert died after he was found guilty by a jury, but before the appellate process could work its way through.
So in California, when a defendant dies and the case is still on appeal, the conviction is abated, it's vacated, it's gone.
So the question is, was final justice ever really done? Probably not for Kathy Durst's family.
Not knowing what happened to Kathy over all these years, not knowing where her body is, not being able to give her a burial, not having any closure.
The most tragic part is that the family will never have those answers.
It's been 40 years. I miss Kathy. We would have had a good time growing old together.
Robert Durst's first wife's family is still trying to hold Durst accountable for her death, with a lawsuit now as their final recourse.
And Kathy McCormick's relatives are now targeting his estate, which has an estimated value in the tens of millions. That's our program for tonight. I'm Amy Robach.
And I'm David Muir from all of us here at ABC News in 2020. Good night.
ਅਸੀਂ ਮੱਇਆ ਟੁਰ ਜਾਣਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮਾਲਕ ਵਤਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਮੱਇਆ ਟੁਰ ਜਾਣਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਮੱਇਆ ਟੁਰ ਜਾਣਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮਾਲਕ ਵਤਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਲਵੇ ਮੋਰੋਦਾ ਤੇਰੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਕਾਨੂੰ ਰੁਲਦੇ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਤੇਰੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰੋਂਦਾ ਤੇਰੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਕਾਨੂੰ ਰੁਲਦੇ ਤੇਰੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਕਾਨੂੰ ਰੁਲਦੇ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਤੇਰੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰੋਂਦਾ ਕੜੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਾ ਬੈਠਾ ਆਇਆ ਸੀ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਜਨਾ ਢੋਲਾ ਅੱਖੀਆਂ ਵੇਲਾ ਬੈਠਾ ਆਇਆ ਸੀ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਜਨਾ ਆਇਆ ਸੀ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਜਨਾ ਢੋਲਾ ਅੱਖੀਆਂ ਵੇਲਾ ਬੈਠਾ ਹਾਲ ਫਕੀਰਾਂ ਦਾ ਦਿਲ ਨੂੰ ਵੇ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਮਾਈ ਕਸ਼ਮੀਰਾਂ ਦਾ ਦਿਲ ਨੂੰ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਦਿਲ ਨੂੰ ਵੇ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਮਾਈ ਕਸ਼ਮੀਰਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਭ ਚਿਲਸਾ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਤੇ ਮੇਲ ਚਨਾ ਰਹੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਤੇ ਮੇਲ ਚਨਾ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਤੇ ਮੇਲ ਚਨਾ ਰਹੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਮਿਲਦਾ सूट तेरो सतरंग गो, सूट तेरो सतरंग गो, तेरी चढ़ती जुबानी है वो सूट तेरो सतरंग गो। बलस गिए, कुड़िए बलस गिए, तेरी बायां बिच बंग सोबे वो अखां बिच सुरमो तेरे, अखां बिच सुरमो तेरे, हाथ मेहंदी गो रंग सोबे वो कुड़िए बलस गिए। बलस गिए, कुड़िए बलस गिए, तेरा गल विच डोर सोनी, लौंग तेरो दूर चमके, लौंग तेरो दूर चमके, बाकी तेरी टोर सोनी वो कुड़िए बलस गिए। तेरी बोल गो के कहनो वो बोल तेरा सुन सुनेंगे, बोल तेरा सुन सुनेंगे, कड़ी पल तिना देखता रहनो वे कुड़ी बलस गिए। तेरी खा जामी वो चोरी चोरी मिल नाजल, चोरी चोरी मिल नाजल, मत सामने आ जावे वो कुड़ी बलस गिए। बलस गिए, कुड़िए बलस गिए, तेरो जियो सुनो फुल कोई नी वो दुनिया माला कीमत, दुनिया माला कीमत, तेरो किते भी मुल कोई नी वो कुड़िए